Yo, what is up everybody, it's Jay the Great here and welcome back to another Naruto reaction video here today. And today we have yet another interesting hypothetical inverse Naruto matchup by 6. And as you can tell by the title, this is Naruto versus Hashirama, the real winner. So folks, when looking at this matchup rationally, it is easy to deduce, or arguably induce, that the most competitive and contentious matchup between these two respective characters would be KCM2 Naruto versus Hashirama, or arguably KCM2 Sage Mode Naruto versus Hashirama, right? Hashirama states that when Naruto gives chakra to the Shinobi Alliance, that his chakra is relative to his own, implying some sort of relativity. However, that any such that individual's chakra level isn't the only variable that you must take into account when assessing someone's power, right? So therefore, the statement chakra levels is the only variable and directly correlated to power wouldn't be an axiom, because there are cases where people have more chakra but are weaker, such as Kisame and the Akatsuki, right? Pain states that he has the most chakra, yet it is widely believed that he is not the strongest Akatsuki member, right? People have Pain, Obito, and Itachi over him, at least in the majority of the Naruto fandom. So chakra levels most definitely is a variable, but it's not the only variable, right? If you say that is the only variable, that could be classified as a false dichotomy, which is a logical fallacy, because chakra isn't the only variable, as you could tell, with there being cases where that isn't the case, right? So this is a very interesting matchup. It is always talked about amongst the Naruto fandom, and I'm sure 6 is going to dig into the empirical evidence for both sides and give a winner on this, or possibly say that can go either way, because it is very contentious, right? Just thinking about it on the top of my head. So let's see what 6 has to say today. But before we begin, any less greatly appreciate it, hit that like button, turn on bell notifications to stay updated with yours truly. And if you are new and you enjoy, man, you must do the kid, make sure to hit that sub button, because once you do, become part of the family forever. Let's not waste any more time, screen. Let's see what 6 says today.
Both reincarnates of Ashura, both would become Hokage during their lifetime, both with an insane healing factor, and both known as insanely powerful with the ability to control or tame Biju. We're talking about Hashirama versus Naruto. Narratively, this battle has very little weight. These are both protagonists in the story and they have no real need to fight each other.
Correct.
That does not stop them from being compared to one another. Some people think Hashirama isn't strong enough to take on KCM2 Naruto, and some people think Hashirama and Madara would have done better against Jigen or Ishiki than Naruto and Sasuke did. Whichever side of the debate you're on, I think we can all agree there is some point in the series that this becomes an interesting or contentious fight. Despite mentioning that both of them became Hokage at the start of the video, I'm not going to be covering Hokage Naruto versus Hashirama in this video. I think there's an abundance of videos that make it crystal clear who would win that fight, most people obviously favoring Naruto. This video is going to focus on KCM2 Naruto, both before and after he learns to use Sage Mode along with the form, and Hashirama in Sage Mode and base form in his alive body. Since Naruto has no known sealing jutsu, it'd be pretty unfair for me to put him up against an Edo Tensei. If you enjoy this type of content, you should leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. I have a ton of other versus battles on my channel you can check out after this one, but let's start off with the first Hokage, Hashirama. For starters, Hashirama is outright stated to be the strongest shinobi of his era, and possibly of all time up until the war arc, with multiple guides saying as much. The anniversary guide, for example, states that base Hashirama's body was considered the strongest weapon in the history of Konoha, and a lot of feats actually back this up. As most people know, Hashirama was rivaling Madara while they were alive, and later on when they were both revived using Edo Tensei. However, a lot of people don't pay much attention to the specifics of how they compared to each other. While they were close overall, Hashirama was the winner between the two, and Madara even acknowledged him as the only shinobi capable of defeating him. Hashirama in base was physically fast and strong enough to keep up with EMS Madara during their fight in the Final Valley, and later on when Hashirama was revived as an Edo Tensei, close in strength to when he was alive as stated by Tobirama, he was still capable of clashing with and dodging Edo Madara on multiple occasions. Hashirama's physical showings don't stop there in terms of speed. Hashirama in base was also capable of dodging attacks from Madara's majestic attire Susanoo, and keeping up with Tobirama in taijutsu and travel speed during their fight with Hiruzen as severely nerfed Edos in part 1. And Madara implies he may think Tobirama have been the fastest shinobi of their era, so that just goes to show how, while it might not be too obvious upon first glance, Hashirama is one of the physically strongest characters during the war arc. It also should be noted, Hashirama is portrayed to be superior to Tobirama in virtually every other area, especially power. You see this on full display in the war arc whenever Tobirama threatens Sasuke and the rest of Team Heavy, and Hashirama is able to make Tobirama cuck down to him with nothing but a glance. Hashirama wasn't just considered the strongest shinobi because of his physical power. The Anniversary Guide and 4th Data Book also attribute part of his reputation to his Kekkei Genkai wood style. With wood style, Hashirama can use a wide variety of techniques that range from simple uses like spawning trees and barriers, making clones, or even more advanced uses like his wood constructs. Wood style also gives Hashirama a big advantage against Naruto here due to its natural ability to suppress and absorb chakra, including from tailed beast. Some of these include deep forest emergence, which Hashirama can use to create a large forest in an instant, and he can even restrain enemies while doing so, or use the forest to deflect and guide attacks. This is something he even implied he could do to a tailed beast bomb from the Ten Tails during the war arc while using a wood clone. Hashirama can use wood style to spam clones to assist him in battle like Naruto, and when used by Madara, they were even strong enough to use powerful techniques like his Susanoo. Hashirama, like Madara, is also skilled enough with this ability to make flowers with deep forest bloom, which can secrete pollen capable of knocking an enemy unconscious when inhaled. Hashirama can also use wood style defensively with his 5-hand technique to create giant hands that are so strong they could even stop slashes from Madara's Majutsu Susanoo. Like I said before, wood style can also be used to create animated constructs like Hashirama's wood dragons and wood golem. With his wood dragons, Hashirama can bind and restrain opponents and even hurt them in the process like he did to Kurama. When used by Edo Madara, just one wood dragon was enough to deal with KCM2 Naruto and his Kurama avatar, even sucking away most of his chakra. Hashirama can also use multiple wood dragons, so he can potentially use this ability on an even higher scale than Madara. The wood golem is also incredibly strong, being able to keep up with full Kurama and Madara's armored Susanoo at the same time. And when Hashirama used this technique in Sage mode, he was capable of taking Edo Madara's perfect Susanoo. Hashirama also has the ability to use Sage mode, which drastically increases his strength and those of his techniques, like which is stated in the data book numerous times, but Hashirama gets his own specific statement for this in data book 4, which could indicate his Sage mode is a bigger boost than the others we've seen in the franchise, but it's likely just the data book being redundant and telling us that he gets a stat buff like everyone else. This gives Hashirama the basic expanded sensory abilities we see in other sages, as well as access to a few much stronger wood style techniques. In Sage mode, Hashirama can use the deity gates, which were so powerful they could restrain Edo Madara and the Ten Tails. Side note, I know Hashirama used the deity gates on Edo Madara in base form, but this just sort of implies he can wield Senjutsu in just his base form, which is extremely impressive and even backed up later on. When Madara goes to steal Hashirama's Senjutsu after being revived by Obito, he takes Senjutsu from a base form Hashirama, and that's when we see the Sage mode appear on the Hashirama face in his chest. With the deity gates, Hashirama could potentially pin down Naruto and win the fight pretty easily, unless Naruto evades the gates. Hashirama in Sage mode is also capable of using true several thousand hands technique, commonly referred to as the Wood Buddha. This statue was so powerful, it was able to clash with and overpower Madara's Majestic Attire Susanoo and a volley of its tailed beast bombs. The statue also has the ability to suppress chakra of the tailed beast with a single touch, and the databook even emphasizes that Hashirama developed this technique to fight tailed beasts. With this jutsu, Sage Hashirama could easily overpower KCM Naruto or his Kurama avatar and potentially render Kurama unconscious as he's done in the past. The databook also mentions that this technique is so powerful, it breaks its own hands when throwing punches. Hashirama isn't just renowned for his strength, but also his unparalleled healing factor. Hashirama has a unique genetic ability that, along with his naturally high chakra reserves, allows him to heal almost any injury. The databook and Madara even indicate that his healing factor is superior to people like Tsunade and Sakura's Yin Seal, which can even regrow organs and limbs. Madara also implies that this tenacity could lead to one conclusion, that Hashirama was a superior shinobi to him and virtually everyone else around. Hashirama has also displayed impressive stamina, being able to fight for days on end. This means simply damaging or hurting Hashirama will not be enough for Naruto to defeat him. In order to kill Hashirama, Naruto will need to brutally overpower him. Hashirama also displays other notable skills, with the data book indicating he was an expert in ninjutsu, taijutsu, and genjutsu along with wood style. Hashirama is capable of using all 7 basic chakra natures. He showcases some skill in swordsmanship, wielding multiple giant blades against Madara, and he can even use some genjutsu like the Bringer of Darkness technique. So overall, Hashirama is an absolute monster in the verse, and up until Jubito shows up, he remains uncontested as the top dog. So with that out of the way, let's get into how Naruto compares to Hashirama.
Alright.
As I'm sure most of you would agree, any Naruto before the war arc would clearly and easily lose to Hashirama, while any version of Naruto from after the war arc would clearly be able to beat Hashirama. So that leaves us the question of, how does Naruto compare to Hashirama during the war arc? To answer that, we'll start off with KCM1 Naruto and work our way up to 6 past Naruto. When Naruto first unlocks Kurama Chakra Mode, or KCM, he's definitely not a pushover, which is emphasized by the fact that he carried the Shinobi Alliance during the early stages of the war, while stronger than ever before. However, he's definitely nowhere near Hashirama's level at this point. KCM1 Naruto is only about as strong as EMS Sasuke, with them keeping up with one another against the Ten Tails and unstable Jubito, with multiple characters like Minato and Tobirama noting what a great duo the pair make. This would be enough to say Naruto loses, since Madara, who Hashirama can beat, is stated to be much stronger than EMS Sasuke numerous times, even while in Edo Tensei. This is told to us by numerous characters like Orochimaru and Madara himself, as well as the 4th data book and some Ninja Storm 4 extras if you're into that stuff. Naruto also has no answer for Hashirama's wood style at this point, and probably wouldn't receive much help from Kurama at this stage, so Hashirama could easily just beat Naruto up at this stage or drain up all of his chakra.
Most definitely.
Really
He's
matter.
not on the level.
This fight becomes a lot
yet.
closer when Naruto bonds with Kurama and unlocks KCM2, Kurama's full power, which gives Naruto access to almost as much chakra as Sage Hashirama. While Edo Madara was capable of keeping up with attacks from KCM2 Naruto, and it stated that Naruto needed Kurama's full power just to fight him, he still displays superiority in some areas, with the data book even calling KCM2 Naruto and Kurama the strongest 2-man cell. In terms of travel speed, KCM2 Naruto was fast enough to intercept Obito and Madara's attacks from across the battlefield, which for Madara's Susanoo are implied to be faster than his regular attacks. This is also supported by the comparison made between KCM2 Naruto and Minato by Kakashi and Guy, who in terms of travel speed or body flicker is faster than Hashirama and Tobirama. While Madara was in Edo Tensei in this fight, Naruto also wasn't at full capacity, as evidenced by his wispy cloak and the fact that later on he was able to floor Blind Sage Madara and his Susanoo, who was stated to be roughly around the same level as back when he had the EMS. However, it should be noted that while Naruto does showcase superiority to Edo Madara in some instances, he wasn't skilled enough to capitalize on many of his advantages within the fight, which led to an eventual stalemate. With that being said, it's fair to say KCM2 Naruto could definitely keep up with and even outrun base Hashirama. Hashirama can still weaken and overwhelm him with wood style like Madara did, and he should still be superior to KCM2 Naruto to some degree when using Sage Mode. However, this changes once Naruto starts using Biju Sage Mode. Like Hashirama, Naruto has also mastered Sage Mode, and in Biju Sage Mode, or BSM for short, and he also becomes much faster and stronger, albeit on a much larger scale, since for this form he converts Kurama's chakra to Sage chakra. While Naruto was already approaching Hashirama's level in KCM2, he arguably exceeded it in Biju Sage Mode. Unlike Hashirama and Madara, who immediately admitted inferiority to unstable Jubito, Biju Sage Mode Naruto was able to begin to keep up with a full power Jubito, and presented a significant threat to him alongside Sasuke, who was amped up by the curse mark and Naruto's own chakra. While Hashirama and Madara were Edo Tensei when this was stated, as I said before, the Edo nerf isn't significant, so this wouldn't really change anything about how they compare to Jubito, especially since he wasn't at full power. Biju Sage Mode Naruto, while also being faster than KCM2 Naruto, also keeps up with KCM Minato after he snaps out of his daze. And as I said before, base Minato is already faster than Hashirama to some degree. So ultimately, this would be the strongest form of Naruto that Hashirama could defeat. After this, Hashirama gets power clipped terribly. Once Naruto unlocks 6-pass Sage mode, he reaches a completely different level
Yeah, it's no longer
and
a
completely
conversation at that
eclipses
point.
Hashirama.
He's
Even in
blatantly
base,
superior.
6-pass Naruto beat Jubi Madara badly and took him down with a lava-style Rasen Shuriken, arguably performing better than 8th Gate Guy. The databook also tells us base 6-pass Naruto had too much chakra to be affected by Madara's Truth Seeker Orbs, so he honestly wouldn't even need his chakra cloak to beat up Hashirama. As a side note, if Naruto beating up a Madara who absorbed the 10 tails doesn't make it clear he would beat Hashirama, then I don't know what would.
Right.
While Naruto's arsenal isn't as wide as Hashirama's and he'd be at a disadvantage against Wood Style, he still has ways to win. Like Hashirama, Naruto can spam shadow clones, and his fighting style at each point in the series seems to rely on using them along with his Rasengan and Rasen Shuriken, which he can make stronger with his different forms. The Rasengan is Naruto's signature jutsu, and when used in KCM, Naruto has multiple different ones he can use in various situations. This includes Massive Rasengan, which even used in base form with some help from Kurama, were enough to stop the advance of Edo Madara's Deep Forest emergence. Naruto can also spawn smaller Rasengan around larger ones with his Orbital Rasengan, or use his chakra arms to drag enemies into his Rasengan. Naruto can also amplify the force and cutting power of his Rasengan by imbuing them with Wind Style. This could also potentially help him repel many of Hashirama's Wood Style jutsu. Naruto's much more advanced Rasen Shuriken can also be used at a long range, and when thrown by KCM2 Naruto was able to move along KM1 Lee, who blitzed at Madara. Though I do acknowledge that you can make some arguments that Madara just didn't care to get hit in this specific scenario. Naruto and KCM can also spawn chakra arms to create Rasen Shurikens, even miniature ones with just his fingertips. Kurama's chakra also allows Naruto to use a wide variety of different abilities, while also bolstering his original ones alongside his speed and strength. In KCM, Naruto uses so much chakra and runs so fast that it appears like he's always using body flicker. Naruto also possesses a healing factor, and while it probably is not as busted as Hashirama's, he still has been shown to be capable of healing significant injuries with small amounts of chakra from Kurama. He can also fight for days on end due to his large chakra reserves like Hashirama. While the chakra is beneficial to Naruto and Hashirama can absorb it, it may be disadvantageous to do so, as Yamato implies Kurama's chakra acts like a poison due to his hatred, and he isn't anywhere near as warm as Naruto's enemies even after he softens up. Naruto in KCM2 also has the ability to use the Kurama avatar or just parts of it. And while he was losing to the Wood Dragon, he did initially tear it up before getting his chakra absorbed. Naruto can also use tailed beast bombs and high density chakra blasts capable of leveling large areas and vaporizing targets. Naruto, being a perfect Jinchuriki, also is immune to Genjutsu due to his partnership with Kurama, so ultimately any Genjutsu that Hashi uses, like Bringer of Darkness, would be useless. And Naruto may be able to use his connection to wake up Kurama if Hashirama puts him to sleep. All in all, this shapes up to be a pretty interesting matchup, and it's a real shame we never got to see the two reincarnations of Ashura interact more. Just to sum things up once again, Hashirama at the end of the day is one of the strongest shinobi ever, and Naruto had to spend a long time training hard and growing to reach his level, and eventually surpass him. We see a lot of this growth directly through his battles in the war arc, where he goes from being far beneath Hashirama to rivaling him to far exceeding him by the end of the war. As always, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and have a nice day.
Skilling. Alright, there you guys have it. I wanted to digest what he said before I give my own thoughts here. So, the most contentious factor, right, for KCM2 Naruto versus Hashirama would most likely be speed, right? And here's what a lot of people don't realize. Speed, similar to chakra levels, like I spoke of earlier before we started the video, isn't the only factor that you gotta take into account when concluding who would win in a hypothetical, right? Now, Tobirama was the fastest shinobi of his era, as stated by Madara. Yet, he was weaker than Hashirama, and he was weaker than Madara. So, just because you're faster doesn't necessarily mean you will defeat an opponent. What's important is how vast is the gap in speed, right? That's what really matters. If you're significantly faster to the point where AP is negated because they simply can't hit you, then okay, you most likely take the victory. But there's no real way to quantify the gap in power between Hashirama and KCM2 Naruto. There is no real way to quantify the gap in speed. And there's arguments for Hashirama's speed, right? Madara needed Kurama. He fought Hashirama. He used his own Susanoo and put armor around Kurama. That's very similar to Naruto and Sasuke when they mix their powers together, such as when they fought Momoshiki or when they fought Jigen, etc. It is highly implied that that amplifies your power. That's the only rational reason to do so, right? It's very unlikely that it lowers your speed, because why would they do it? Why would Naruto and Sasuke combine their powers? Why would Madara combine his Susanoo with Kurama if it lowers your speed? Right? So rationally, you can conclude it amplifies your power most likely and amplifies your speed. And Hashirama still was able to react to it. A prime Madara combined with Kurama, with the Susanoo being implied to be faster than the host itself, with Kurama on top of that, right? That's very fast. And Hashirama was able to react to that. So Hashirama isn't exactly slow just because his brother was faster than him. And again, the gap between Naruto and Hashirama as far as speed is unquantifiable. Clearly, the gap between Tobirama and Hashirama wasn't vast enough to where Tobirama was superior, right? He was always the inferior one, clearly. So, again, saying speed is the only factor is a false dichotomy in some cases, such as this one. Because the gap in speed isn't apparent enough to suggest that Naruto is just that much faster and he would blitz Hashirama, right? That's not necessarily the case. And that Tobirama statement and the fact that he's inferior kind of supports that, right? So you gotta take that into account when trying to determine who would most likely win. So to recapitulate what Six said, KCM2 Naruto versus Hashirama is most likely the most contentious. I lean towards Hashirama because he could subdue Biju Chakra. KCM2 Naruto still seemed inferior to Madara overall, right? And that was Edo Madara. Even in Sage Mode, when Madara attained Sage Mode from Hashirama, that's when Hashirama, I believe, that's when he said he's approaching his past power. So he wasn't even at full power yet, I believe. Correct me if I'm mistaken. But I believe he said something along the lines as he's regaining his power. Like he's approaching the level he was when he was alive. And Naruto had trouble against him in KCM2. Now KCM2 Sage Mode, I lean a little bit towards Naruto because he was able to contend with Jubito to some extent. While Hashirama just flat out stated, I can't beat him. I can't beat Jubito. I'm inferior. So that seems to be the case. Is it concretely the case? No. Because I would argue Naruto KCM2 Sage Mode had help from EMS Sasuke when fighting Jubito, so he wasn't exactly by himself, you know. So it's very contentious. There's many factors. You got to approach every minuscule detail and look at every minuscule detail from every angle and recapitulate all those events and formulate your argument to conclude who would most likely win. It's extremely contentious because empirically there isn't much. There's some things where you can extrapolate some conclusions, right? There are some events and some statements that you can extrapolate conclusions from. But there are some factors that are simply unquantifiable or simply inconclusive, concretely at least, objectively, right? So you got to come up with your best interpretation to come to a conclusion. It's a very, very interesting debate. One of the most interesting debates in all the Naruto fandom. And it will continue to be so because it is inconclusive, objectively speaking, on who would win. In a debate setting, there's going to be a winner, right? But objectively, is there a clear-cut winner? No, there's not. No, there's not. When you get to 6 past Naruto, of course, Naruto slaps Hashirama. I mean, the guy was contending with Kaguya, so there's no way. But KCM2 Sage Mode Naruto versus Hashirama, that's pretty inconclusive. Even KCM2 Naruto, but I still tend to lean more to Hashirama because he has better feats and has the abilities to subdue Naruto's Biju, etc. So this is a very, very intriguing topic. But yeah, folks, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. What do you think? I'm sure there's going to be different opinions as always because this is very contentious and people have different interpretations. So let me know in the comments, who do you think wins? I'm always interested to hear you guys' thoughts. If you have any other recommendations, also let me know in the comment section below. But that's going to wrap it up, folks, and I'll catch you in the next video. It's Jitterbug signing out. Peace.